Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Everhart Museum. My name is Kimberly Crafton, and I am the Folk and Traditional Arts Coordinator at the museum. And I am here today with Sujata Nair-Mulloth, and we are proud to introduce to you a wonderful program called Reflections of Home, a discussion and an exhibit of 4 women artists and their experiences of immigration and adaptation. This has been generously funded by the Lackawanna County Arts and Culture Department, and I'm pleased to present to you Sujata, our program director, to tell you a little bit about what you're going to enjoy today. Sujata.
Thank you. Today's discussion is a wonderful conversation between 4 women artists from different parts of the world who have made their journey, in fact, who have not only made their journey from their home, but they have brought with them their ancient traditional craft or art, and they are persevering that art, they are practicing that art, they are teaching that art form in the new home. Now, leaving your home is hard enough. Moving to a new place, adapting to this new place, adjusting, making changes to your lifestyle is hard enough. But in order to try and preserve the ancient art form that they brought with them is even harder. But that is what most of these women have done. The traditional art form that they brought with them, they have not only practiced it, they are trying very hard to preserve it. And most importantly, they are teaching it to the next generation so that this art form survives and lives on in its new home. And this is a journey that is not easy by any means. And that is what all these women artists are going to discuss today. And this is a conversation that will resonate with many who have moved away from their home. And for others, it will present a completely different point of view of people who move away from their home and the struggles that they have in settling and adjusting to their new home. And this discussion has been, as Kimberly said, very generously supported by the Lackawanna County Council of the Arts. They are an organization that have always been very, very supportive of the diverse artistic traditions. And because of that, as individual artists it might be very difficult for them to, showcase their art form in a way that is accessible to everyone. But because of the support of, and the supportive grants that are provided by the Lackawanna County Council of Arts, it is possible to bring all of this for the general population of the Scranton area. And, we are very, very grateful to the Lackawanna County for their support. So today, we now present Reflections of Home.
And I'd like to start by introducing to you the artistic director of the project, Sujata Nair-Mulloth. And Sujata is a performer, she's a teacher, choreographer, and she is the artistic director and founder of the Kala School of Indian Classical Dance, which she established in Clark Summit and other cities in the area in 1995. As a performer, Sujata's been giving recitals all over the world since 1979. And as a teacher, she has taught Bharatanatyam in New Delhi, India, and in the United Kingdom. She teaches at the conservatory at Wilkes University in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania for the last 17 years. She also conducts classes in Scranton, Binghamton, And in her choreographies, Sujata uses this classical dance form to create thought-provoking work that transcends cultural boundaries. This is the birth of this conversation. She's a rostered artist with the Pennsylvania Council on the Arts and has several productions to her credit, which have been funded and supported by grants from Lackawanna County, the county in which her school is located. She's worked as a journalist and now teaches communications, arts, and humanities at Keystone College and at Marywood University in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Sujata, thank you for convening this wonderful discussion today and for the ideas that are inside you that gave birth to it. Welcome and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kimberly. Hello, everyone. It's so nice to see all of you here today. I am a classical Indian dance performer. I perform Bharatanatyam. And when I moved to the United States, I brought this traditional art form with me. And I started teaching and performing this art form. But as the years went by, I found myself choreographing dances that had elements of my traditional art, as well as elements from the American culture. And these choreographies took on a new identity, a different identity. So this got me thinking, if this was possible and this was happening in the performing arts, I was curious to know whether the same thing was happening in the other art forms as well. And this is what gave me the idea to bring this conversation to all of you. So today we have artists from different countries who are specialists in very different areas, and they will talk about their experience of this journey of creating pieces that have a new identity. And so with a grant from the Lackawanna County, the Color School of Indian Dance collaborated with the Everhart Museum in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and we were able to bring this wonderful conversation to you where all these artists would talk about their experiences and their journey. Kimberly?
Thank you, Sujata. And to help us do that today, we are very pleased to have with us Amy Skillman to moderate the conversation and to help guide the artists as we are exploring these wonderful areas. Amy works at the intersection of culture and tension, where paying attention to culture can serve to mediate social change. She advises artists and community-based organizations on the implementation of such programs that honor and conserve cultural traditions. She guides them to those potential resources and develops programs that help build their capacity to sustain initiatives like this. Her work has included oral history and leadership empowerment initiatives with immigrant and refugee women, one particularly in central Pennsylvania. She's also led a Grammy-nominated recording of Old Time Fiddlers in Missouri and a year-long arts residency with alternative education high school students that was rooted in the ethnography of their lives. She recently curated a major traveling exhibition that examines the role of folk arts as a catalyst for activism in communities throughout Pennsylvania. Amy, we're honored to have you here. Thank you for bringing your extensive experience and that heart that you have for helping cultures come together. Enjoy this conversation and thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. And thank you, Sujata, for your thoughtful proposal that we have this conversation. I'm so excited to be here with all of you to kind of guide our conversation a little bit, but this is really about you. And I would like to begin by just giving a quick, brief introduction of each of our four artists that we have with us today, and then we'll dive into the meat of the conversation. So first, let me introduce Nina Kouznetsov. She is a native of Ukraine. She studied music in Kiev and then received her musicology degrees in Moscow in Russia. After immigrating to the United States, she also learned and practiced traditional egg tempera iconography, and she's done that for 30 years. She has worked as a choir director at Orthodox churches in Northeast Pennsylvania. She's a freelance iconographer, a classically trained pianist and organist, and she has a studio where she is teaching iconography, piano, and choir work in Scranton, Pennsylvania. And so then let me introduce Geetha Menon. Geetha is an artist from Phoenix, Arizona. She has been involved with painting since 1984. Her interest in colors and shades began at an early age, but only after graduating from college did she find an institution that could really train her in this field. And this is where she began with watercolors, and then she moved into oil painting, and portraits have been her preferred genre. But she's also started training in a traditional Indian style of painting from Kerala. And after moving to the US, she really began experimenting with different materials and bringing together multiple styles of painting. She paints on porcelain, but Indian themes kind of permeate all of her work. And she's lately, I think she'll talk a little bit about this with us, been working on learning the style of painting called Tanjore style, which is very classically Indian from her home country. Satyavani Pippalla Akula is a dancer and a painter. Growing up, she painted and danced, but went on to pursue a career in the sciences. When she moved to the upstate area of New York, the natural beauty of the area aroused her artistic spirit, and she now has a studio in downtown Elmira. Her work explores various aspects of human identity and connectivity, seeking to create a dialogue between the mindful and the autopilot modes of living, and I'm really anxious to hear more about that. Dr. Kathy Wong was born and raised in Beijing, China. Although her eventual vocation would be medicine, as a child, she always had a great talent and love for music. Her instrument of choice has been the traditional guzheng, or Chinese zither. The ancient guzheng dates from 700 BC. It's a 21-stringed instrument, and it's plucked, creating, I think it's tuned in the A on the pentatonic scale, but it allows for lots of expressive vocal-like melodies. And I think you can hear some of that in the virtual exhibit. She studied with noted guzheng musicians at a conservatory and was honored by many awards. After emigrating to the United States in the 1980s, Kathy wished to use the music of China to build bridges between the East and the West. She served as General Secretary of the Traditional Chinese Music Foundation of North Carolina, and organized concert events at the Duke University Chapel Hill area to present the music and dance and culture of China in this very diverse community. She is also she's a doctor of medicine, but also she's an endocrinologist, but also focuses on traditional Chinese medicine, and is really pleased to present the beauty and mystery of ancient Chinese music and medicine, kind of combines the two, and I'm interested in learning a little bit more about that. So that's who we have with us today. Welcome to all of you. I'm so excited to have this conversation and to have met you and be able to spend the next hour and a half or so with you. So welcome. And I'd like to start by setting the stage a little bit and asking each one of you to just talk for a few minutes about the main features of your art form. What are the distinguishing qualities of your art form? And in particular, I think talk a little bit about how long it took to learn this art form, how you define mastery, how you define expertise in your traditional art form. So who would like to start? Satyavani, why don't I just call on you?
Thank you very much, Amy, for that introduction, and Sujata for this wonderful proposal, and the Avahat Museum for hosting this. It's a pleasure. And I am a dancer. I dance Kuchipudi, which is another one of the Indian classical dance forms. And it is taught through a Guru Sishya Parampara. That means it wasn't really institutionalized till quite recently. So the master's degrees in arts and all that you see is a very, very recent outcome. So it was taught through a teacher who learned it through many generations and who passed it on to the students. And it is a dance form which has specific beats, nritya, okay? And it also has facial expressions and gestural expressions, which are very different, So some of these are universal, some of them are not. Okay. So as far as learning the dance form, anywhere between, it takes anywhere between 2 to 4 years just to grasp the basics, to be able, it has a structure to it that you build on. So that is regarding Kuchipudi. And regarding the paintings that I do, most of it is in oils. And I didn't learn it specifically from someone. I kind of taught myself in the process. But once I came to the upstate area and I switched, I decided to go and participate in art groups where I painted regularly on Fridays. And I took workshops with people, artists I admired who were internationally known, and and just worked on that consistently. So did I answer your question?
Yes, that's great. Thank you. Thank you. Kathy, want to talk a little bit about your
First
journey?
one, I will thank Kim, Council of Arts of Pennsylvania, Lackawanna County, and Amy yourself, and all my new friend here. So, as a doctor, and it's a pretty heavy career, but fortunately, unfortunately, I'm internally falling in love with arts, dance, music. So they spend a lot of time on this. And what, from my life experience, I always use music arts, like visual arts, as a special communication way to connect with the other people. When I see a picture, like I can understand psychologically what's the painter want to tell you and what's the painter's personality. And so much easier to communicate with the other people. Same way, I use my music. I always say music is international language. It is true. Visual arts also. So you may not speak in same tongue language, but you understand same piece music in your way, and in the in general, you can, if someone fall in love with music, the one piece music which you love, and somehow you're in common. So that's my way to communicate. And fortunately, a lot of my patients come from my music too. I routinely perform someplace, and the patient because they understand my music, so they started learn traditional Chinese medicine. That's the connection, okay? So recently I'm falling in love with the visual arts too. I never feel I know how to draw, but somehow from last July, because the pandemic situation, we have more time at home. So I randomly jumped in with a drawing group, started color pencil, and I always like to do the traditional Chinese 写意 or gongbi arts. So I'm working on that. So fortunately, for the short time practice, I be able to paint the portrait and all the other like either car or flower. So my brother's birthday is coming. I even draw a portrait for him. It's very close. Everyone will feel that. It's, I mean, you can develop, this is a weaker part of me, it's the visual arts. Then I think I find a way to make up. I learned from this way. So everywhere we go, music is the way to like communicate with the other culture, other people, to improve the understanding in between. This is very important. As a doctor, as a human being, we really need it. I always say, if we gave everyone a music instrument to like bring out their beauty from internally, there's no war, no anyone to like hate each other, to misunderstanding with each other, even fight, no any reason. Life is such a beautiful, like entire environment, universe. We should use our eye to seeking the beauty of the life, not others.
That's really beautiful. Thank you. And I love that idea of that art brings out the personality of someone. And so, you know, if we really got to know each other better, and art can help us do that, that we could break down those barriers that I do create. But let's hear a little bit from Nina about just just sort of introduce yourself and your art form. And then we'll get back to this question that you're talking about, Kathy, I'm sure.
My traditional part of my artistic journey is Byzantine Russian style of tempera iconography, traditional medieval way it was practiced in Russia. And I would refer it more as a performing arts, because it doesn't, you don't need to think about images until you are really advanced, because they are presented to you, and the style being mostly reach its heights at the 15th century in Russia, Saint Andrei Rublev, and this is how my studio is named after him. And so therefore for me, as a classically trained musician, this was an interesting journey. This art is not just art from whatever you feel like doing. It's akin, let's say, playing piano. You don't compose notes, but you need a lot of technical skills and a lot of heart and inner depths to make your art form very beautiful. And it's more like, it's not more, it's really sacred art and sacred discipline, meditative, contemplative art, and making it go within more, and then to reach divine out, you need to first to reach it inwardly. And so we use ancient tempera, grinding pigments, and real pure gold and clay, and some embossing too, and also There's use of traditional icon boards with a deepening, and it's all symbolic. It all means stages of inner transfiguration, which means that coming from darkness, ego-based personality. I'm speaking on a modern psychology term. This is not how they referred it, but toward understanding of your eternal divine nature, which is the same from all people around. Just being born human already has it. And as far as mastery, it was not until maybe recently that you could even learn it somewhere in a university, because it was introduced to America. That was mystical part which intrigued Americans, that I would say. And I learned it from a great Russian master, and I belonged to that school for almost 30 years. And I'll tell later why I had to part with that school. But it's that's why I learned it privately. And but not, I was big part of the school because I'm bilingual. I was doing translations and all of the other things, and I was assistant at that school. And so I started learning it as a fascinating symbolic theology, you could say, philosophical thought first, because I didn't think I qualified to learn it, because I didn't have any art training at all at that time. But then as I realized that it's performing art, so you just follow instructions and then see where it takes. And then I couldn't stop since, and I see that as I teach now too, let's say they all use the same drawing. Well, if there is a workshop, but it all comes out differently because unconsciously we paint ourselves. It's icon writing. It says writing because it's a language. We don't say icon painting, we say icon writing. And it's, well, you could see that it looks like, face looks like either the person who writes it or somebody who they've been thinking about a lot. So it's a mystical, sacred art in that sense.
Yeah, I love that.
It's very fascinating.
Yeah, I love that. And I think you talk about mastery being going beyond the conscious to the subconscious or the spiritual. And I think you even describe the work as living, you know, that it's a living relationship that you have with the work. So yes,
we say that you do what you can, but you cannot force the Holy Spirit on the icon. It's the same as we are, because icon exists. We call main icon from the Greek word icona, which is a divine image from us. So we paint it on ourselves, and what we have on within, it's coming out without. So
that's great.
Is many layers.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So let's now just go to Geetha. Why don't you give us a little overview of your work and your notion of mastery? And you're muted. Don't forget to unmute.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Kimberly, all of you to, for bringing and introducing to all of these different art forms. And thank you, Sujata, too. And I missed quite a few of your introductory videos and all that because of my treatment has been going on with cancer. So, but I tell you, this is the best thing that has happened. I started painting in '84 at my graduation. And my mom always say, why are you not going for masters? I said, my calling is to do art. And I want to do the drawing and whatever that. And it so happened that the place was very close to where my parents were living, and I was able to take those classes. And my mom was not very supportive at the beginning, but once I started doing the watercolors and oils, started with the still, I still am not a good still life artist. I have some mental blocks for that. I still have to learn that. But then I love doing portraits. And that's how I started. And then I realized that whenever some of the paintings, it takes a long time. I don't know, Sujata shared those. Some of them I couldn't bring it. After we got I got married and I came to this country in 88. And my husband said, don't bring anything from India. You should be able to do it on your own. And I said, those intricate portraits, I don't know whether I'll be able to do it, because as you grow older, the eyesight is going to be bad too, But anyway, I got an opportunity to learn the portraits, and I really enjoyed it. After coming here, I was trying to pursue that art. I took a couple of art classes in Chicago when we moved here. And then after coming to Arizona in 92 is when I started really enjoying the art, in the sense that I was doing a little bit of what I learned and brought some oil paints. And so I did the watercolors, still life, and then oil painting. Then I switched to porcelain painting, which was totally out of the blue. And 92 to 93 onwards, I've been painting like small pictures. And then in 97, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. My parents came over and said, Geetha, God has given you this gift to distract your mind, like what Satyavani was talking about. Everybody will get an opportunity. That spiritual connection will happen, and you just have to tune into it. That's what I've learned. And then I started doing more of the art, like oil painting and all of that. Then I paused a little bit because my children were growing up, and my husband traveled quite a bit. And then in 2007 is when 2008 is when I'm doing a Montessori program. I took the training right after my cancer treatment in 97. I went to I don't know whether you're able to see. Are you okay? Seeing me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can
Are
see
you able
you.
to hear?
Yes.
Okay. So right. So then I took the Montessori training, and I'm a teacher of ages 3 to 6. So I teach the children when they are potty trained,
Nice.
They come here, and I teach the children here. Because of this whole pandemic, I'm doing it using Zoom, and I really enjoy teaching young children. They're so innocent, but at the same time, I'm able to incorporate the art form that I learned to the children also. A little bit of watercolors, a little bit of acrylic, so that way when the Mother's Day projects and all come, it's their own work. Why don't you do this for me, Geetha? I said, no, that's your artwork. But if you need, I will show you on a little piece of paper, and then you do it. But this is one of my students' grandmother who gave me a gift in Christmas time, and she gave me a, and she said, oh, and I said, it's so beautiful. That's when I noticed that. She said, I painted that. It's on porcelain. Would you like to come and learn? And that's how I got introduced to porcelain painting.
Oh, that's how that started.
Porcelain painting is,
yeah.
I'm sure you have more in your area. Arizona, we don't have that many. Porcelain artists are all in their, I would say I'm probably the youngest one in the group. I'm 57, but then most of them are like in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. One of my teachers, 8. And she will wait for me to come to her house.
Well, I love that you
she won't touch my piece, but yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Amy.
That's great. I love that
Thank you.
Thank
you for the opportunity.
Yes. Thank you. I love that you have sort of evolved from doing sort of Western classical art forms to now doing art forms that really have a lot of Indian motifs and Indian. Yeah, right. I think that's really interesting. Right. So,
and the mural painting that I did,
we actually
they're all done on the walls of temples, and that's what we are incorporating into the canvas.
Yes.
The mural painting that I did, it was all done in the 17th century with the plant-based plant. What do you call it? They extract the colors from the plants. And that was all orange and green and natural colors. Now we use acrylic paint and we use it on canvas, not on the walls anymore. Yeah. So that's a different form of art, but it is nice. Yeah.
Yeah, which makes it more portable, right? So before, yes, thank you. Before we talk about kind of the evolutionary changes that you all have made in your art, I want to ask you just for a few minutes to talk about the concept of home. You know, the title of our session is Reflections of Home. And home is a pretty complicated notion, much more than just a location, right? And as Sujata has said, it's a fragile fabric, and I'm quoting her here, made up of myriad images, emotions, sights, and smells. This is a global space shared by all humans. However, territories are constantly being drawn, redrawn, negotiated, contested, and even captured. And this makes the idea of home a pretty fluid idea. So since our topic is reflections of home, I just thought it might be interesting. You all have moved from one locale or one home to another. And I'm curious, you know, what is your concept of home and how you maybe incorporated that into your art, or I think Geetha, back to your, you know, now that you came to the United States and you began now reflecting back on painting styles from a home there. I'm just curious if you all could just talk for a few minutes about your notion of home and how that plays out in your art forms, in your work.
Yes, my concept of home really evolved since the time I immigrated, because at first it was obviously where I was born and all my connections and loyalties were there. And with that came some, as I understand now, feeling of exclusivity, superiority, negative traits. But as I evolved now and studied other cultures, I studied many different spiritual culture mostly to know what the wisdom of the world say. I learned that we all as human want the same thing, to be happy, to know how to reach that lasting depths and happiness, and how to express ourselves. So I became then more identifying with being in America as loving all people equally, not just your own tribe, so to speak. And then I evolved even further, which identifying as Earth is my home, and even more as a citizen, they say, of global citizen. Sometimes I tell to the friends that I feel I'm not from this planet with all my interests, because it's hard for many people to relate to. But then how it's expressed, I know that if you do it from the heart, whatever you do, I now mostly do playing piano for the church, and people respond very, very in a special way to me. They appreciate it very much because they feel it. They feel that I do it, well, with skills, of course, that I have, but I do it from the heart. And the same with iconography or anything else. So I'm becoming more like a global citizen and see why certain things that I didn't like about my culture, or I liked how it's contributed, but other cultures have their own treasures, and it's really helpful on my own spiritual journey to see and appreciate what's beautiful in others. That's a goal of us too. Love your neighbor as yourself. If you don't see who your neighbor is, how you can love them? So you see beauty in them.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Satyavani, I think you unmuted yourself for a minute. Did you want to add something to that?
So I think I would say home is more a feeling for me, an emotion at this point. I have stayed as much in America as I've stayed in India. And, when I'm here, I'm an Indian. Even though I'm an American citizen, when I go to India, I'm an American. But for me personally, I think home is wherever I feel that comfort, that emotion of comfort. And I feel it here. I felt it in Rome when I was traveling. So in different places where, I felt at home in Puerto Rico among nature. So I think home is for me more, just that comfortable feeling, and a little bit more expansive.
So I like that, we talk about this notion of feeling at home, at home in a place, feeling at home in Puerto Rico in the woods, or feeling at home when you're walking on the beach someplace. And so that notion of feeling at home is different than thinking of home as a building or a place where you sleep and eat, right? But I'm curious how, and Satyavani, you have a piece of art behind you that is, it looks like it's flowers, chrysanthemums, or something like that I'm assuming you drew. But what I love is that if you look closely right down in the middle, there's or at the far left corner, it looks like there's a statue of perhaps one of the Hindu deities. And I wonder if that is your way of placing home, or bringing your idea of home or culture identity into a piece of art that otherwise, is a still life of flowers. So I wonder if you could talk about that a little.
Sure. That's interesting you say that, because I see culture. I mean, I don't necessarily see home and culture as the same thing. And for me, just the comfort of, a friend's place where I'm invited, and that is home, So it's more a feeling for me. But it's true that when I started painting, I was always painting actually. But when I decided to take it as a career, I wasn't sure. I was a software engineer working for Corning. And then I thought, I was really, the beauty around me was calling paint. So I decided to go into it. But then I decided to try it for a short amount of time, because I knew that I would not have the economic security that my software engineering job provided when I was going to switch careers. So I tried it for a little while, and all I painted were flowers and anything I found. They were not necessarily images like this. And then once that was done, I decided and I switched, and I started actually painting regularly every day. I felt that the still lifes were empty when I put cups, saucers, and other things that people put, because those things didn't really have any meaning for me. And what had meaning was actually the statues. I have many. This is the elephant-headed god Ganesh, and I collect Ganesh in various colors, in various styles, various statues. So for me, that made sense. And even though I'm not a Buddhist, even Buddha made sense, and even Buddha got into a lot of my paintings. That was something I could relate to. That was a religion that I liked, and I'm not hardcore Hindu per se, though I do follow. That's what I grew up with. I do follow Hindu rituals, but it was I love Buddhist sculptures and Buddhist images and icons. So I think you're right. They did, it made more sense for me to include that in my still lives and as backgrounds for my still lives than anything else. And that's what I started doing, even though they were not very popular where I lived. So.
So that is an interesting kind of segue. They were not very popular where I lived into, I think, this larger question of how you all have adapted or made choices to adapt and evolve your artwork based on this new place, this new home, this, you've come from one country and one culture and one home, and you're finding yourself now in a new culture, new country, new home. And, I'm just wondering, was there a particular moment in that journey when you realized that you needed to maybe alter or change your art form in some way? And what did that feel like when you started making those changes? Was there an internal conflict there that you were struggling with, and how did you reconcile that? Or was it really more of a kind of an evolutionary process? I'm curious about that. Does that question make sense?
Yeah.
Who wants
Thank
to?
you.
Yeah, go ahead, Satyavani. Why don't you start?
So for me, I had to choose between which would be my primary mode of art. Would I continue Indian classical dancing, or would I go into painting? And painting was an obvious choice for many reasons. Because where I live, I would not be able to perform, dances regularly and make a living as an Indian classical dancer, which meant I would have to travel away from home to other places around the US or outside. And as a mom of 2 young children, I chose not to. So my Indian classical dance career actually, I was able to focus more on it when I started teaching it and I had students come in. So I would say that is regarding that. Now, regarding my paintings, this is one way, but still lifes are not the only thing. I love portraits and people. So the way I started, choosing was, and it was a very natural evolution, because I realized that when I went in for exhibitions or any of this thing, people wanted diversity, so I would be able to get in one painting or so because of the diversity factor, but they were not really mainstream, And what is interesting is, especially in the Arnott Art Museum, when the children, the school children, they have these scholastic art awards. When the school children would come in, there was a lot more interaction, and they were more open to it, than having it exhibited anywhere else. So the natural progression for me was, let me start exploring humans, because human beings are all the same, right? Beyond the color, we have the same emotions and all that. So I started doing, exploring humans and emotions and going to that level where we can all connect and exploring what is identity. So the couple of exhibitions I did the first one I did was People of Southern Tier. And I think there was 16 or 18 people that I painted from life, and I heard their stories as I was painting. And the personality, what I wanted to see was, we all talk about, I am a certain personality, we all talk about personality, but what is it? We tend to be different people at different times. So the goal of that exhibition was, I would have them tell to themselves, write it down in one sentence who they think they were, and then they could give a paragraph of what they were. And I would have them talk, about their experiences, and I painted them. And at the end, I would come up with a line of who I think they were and see if it matched. And then we played a game where we would have people who came for the exhibition just go around, not read what is being written. And I don't know if we covered it actually. And then they would have to guess what the personality of the person is from the portrait that I've done from life. And that was very popular because it is about us. It is about human beings. And, that there's a connection over there. The other exhibition that I did was Between Fear and Freedom, where I explored the concept of what is freedom and what is fear. And I went through a diverse range of people for that. And some of them were, vice presidents of human resources at Corning. Then there were kids who were in assisted independent living who actually had to face their fears every day. Their fears were right on their face every day. And what I did was I painted for 1 hour from life. And then I did experimental portraiture because that was the fear for me. I, was the fine art portraiture, I was getting portrait commissions. And then I had to go into this territory of doing portraits based on how they viewed themselves. So I had to do different things like illustrations, caricature, whatever the subject, required. So that was interesting. But it still left me with the void of not being able to showcase my, paintings that I had done quite a few. So the other exhibition that I came up with was An Artist Explores Consciousness. And in that, I went into the entire philosophy of the heart, the mind, the body, and the subtle energies, and just, wove them all together. So that's it.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Yeah, I loved your, oh yeah, go ahead, Nina.
Are you finished with Satyavani? Okay, let me add on that. I think I have interesting and dramatic story, you could say. This is how what happened to me for some reason, not just, well, was one of the dramatic way that I'm loyal in my way until I really get a crisis, and then I have to change. So crisis came when I realized that it's all negative motivations that was pursued in Russian style of education that was given to me, both in music and in art. You don't think the harder it is, the better. And students need to be, not need to be, it's like they're intimidated, they feel they're humble in that way. They feel that they're, well, not worth much, and how hard this art is and how far they need to go. And so I felt that this reflected the spiritual concept of a punishing God, which is, or a vengeful God, which is, I stopped subscribing some time ago, and first in my head, then in my heart. And I realized that this is not helpful for a student. You're trying to help students, inspire them, and lovingly, we say that God is love, but why we are doing that? And that was the reason, ultimately, that I had to part with that Russian iconography school. And I was also at the beginning losing a lot of piano students, and I didn't understand why, because, well, they just not accustomed to negative motivation. And it's, you respect the person, doesn't matter that person doesn't know calculus or whatever, advanced psychology, but it's a divine human being, and it's, you love them nevertheless. So this was a very dramatic experience, and I started to be on my own, and I started to help students and to do it differently. Well, it not happened just that I just did it. If it were traditional, nobody would learn. No secular person even would learn to paint icons, because it was primarily for the monks in Russia, and it was, you had to do rigorous fasting and praying, and you just realize in America it wouldn't be possible to do that. And so you have to question validity of all of this, like you have a treasure box and you sit in it and you don't let anybody to see it because of some rules that somebody said some time ago, and it perhaps been good that at that time, but certainly not at our time. And so we've been starting to do some helpful aids, like pictures of the steps that was never done before. So I've done it a hard way, and it was well, in little thing, how to hold your brush, how to put your light in, or to have something to look at. And it's so this is whole different philosophy. So this was a real dramatic conflict that happened some years ago. Well, maybe 8 years ago, not that long ago.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I think moving from kind of an artistic culture of the demand for being the best, right? The demand for mastery and expertise and being the best, to a recognition of art as a process of revealing one's identity, and much more about or revealing one's spirituality or sense of self. I mean, that's a really significant shift, I think.
Yes.
Now, Kathy, I'm really interested. You play, this very traditional Chinese instrument, but, I've seen videos of you playing with banjo players and fiddlers, and, how did that evolution come about for you?
Yeah, come back to the different culture again. Asian instrument, actually, we should say the oldest instrument in the world. Now the guzheng is a guqin, like you can trace if all the musicians have the history. And at that time, they only good for perform inside the palace, very small area. Like you have to have, first one, you have to have the instrument and able to have a time to listen, to enjoy. So after the culture developed, the social status changing. So the instrument started popular, just like a piano in the Western, and the guqin, guzheng developed in Asian area, especially in China. Then all the music composed, it's favored for that piece of instrument. Like I have even 7-string guqin, or the 21 string with a bridge, guzheng. But all the music, right, it's because there's a fingering. You use the 10 finger and move different way. You couldn't against the human, like a nature anatomy. So also the instrument toned, it's differently. After I came to the States, and the very beginning stage is people, it's interested for this really to see the instrument, and later on created the way you couldn't just always play in traditional classical Chinese music. We have to play something that regular people can understand. At that time, I started the bridging with the Western instrument, like a theremin. Piano is the first one, because piano is very easy to get in. All the others, both string instrument, violin or the cello, anything, it's very clarinet, basson, like a oboe. It's very good to accompany with each other. And especially over here, like our northeastern Pennsylvania, we have a less Asian group, which I couldn't form a symphony orchestra. So what I can have introduced, it's the native, like a musician, like a violinist, and all the drum, everything can bring in. So I started to develop a lot of music. Actually, it's culture wise, like a lot of pentatonic toning. It's very good for Irish or Scottish music. So we can just easily to find the way we can merge together. That's the way the culture mixed together too. So very interesting.
Right. So that goes back to what you were saying earlier about so many cultures in the Northeast Pennsylvania area, and being able to find ways to communicate and interact across those cultures through this very common denominator of music, right? Which is what you were talking about earlier.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's great. Geetha, can you talk for a few minutes about that moment of transition? You've sort of gone from painting sort of in a Western classical style to painting in a more Indian classical style. Can you talk a little bit about that and that transition for you?
And I had never done, I had only done one painting with acrylic paint. I have done watercolors, but acrylic was completely new to me. And then when I went to India, I somehow arranged some classes so that way I don't want my family to be talking about my health. You know, it's an ongoing treatment for me to be going through cancer, but this is the best therapy that God has given me, you know, to distract my mind and to sit down and, you know, paint. And I really enjoy it. And in the meantime, you don't plan it. I mean, it happens in a way. It comes to you at a time that you really needed that little distraction. And all of us, I don't know whether I sent a picture to Sujata. I did a coffee painting of Krishna and Buddha, just with the instant coffee, nothing else. You trace it and then I actually have it. I can show you here. I hope I can show you. But it's very interesting to see that. Can you see that?
Yes, and so that is done just with coffee?
Just with the instant coffee, Folgers.
So you mix the water with coffee?
Right.
Excellent.
You just mix the coffee with
Beautiful.
water. You have to trace it first, and then you paint it.
Yeah.
But it gets over like in about a couple of hours.
Now, where did you learn that? Where did you
From
learn
one
to
of my
start
friends.
painting? Huh?
From one of my friends. She said, "Would you
Really?
like to try something new?" I said, "Yeah, sure." And I told her, "I'm not a coffee drinker, I'm a tea drinker. Don't worry, I'll bring the coffee for you."
Well, I wonder if you could use tea.
I'm sure you can, because that also has got a stain, right? So it's like a
Right.
monochrome kind of painting that that you can do. I haven't experimented with other like tea, especially. I've not done it, but it may be a good way to try it out, you know. And
Well, maybe
that's
tea.
They also do it with wine.
Oh,
With
yeah, they
wine.
do? Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
different
Wow,
step.
my color.
Because painting is usually values, right? You're building up on values, like so.
Right. And it's very easy to correct it. There are a lot of my friends who, you know, took the class with my friend and said, "Geetha, I want to do this coffee painting again." I said, "Just bring your canvas." We just, "Oh, but I'm going to make lard." That's the fun part. You just put the brush in water and then wipe it up. Everything is gone. You start all over. So it's so therapeutic, you know, just putting it down, wiping it out. So I really enjoyed
How
it.
long does the color can stay?
What's that?
How long the color can stay?
Color will stay. What I did was, after the painting was done, I
You
sprayed
did a
it with the
protection.
artist's varnish so that way it doesn't smudge. And
Thank
if
you.
somebody, you know, spills water or something, I didn't want anything to happen. So I just put some artist's varnish on it and it stays there. But I enjoy doing the acrylic painting. It's very much like how Satyavani was talking about in the oils. There are a lot of color combinations that you can do, and it is between. I would define it as between watercolors and oil. Am I right, Satyavani? There's very much like, you know, there's a lot more that you can do, and it being in Arizona dries very fast too. So it's almost, you know. So I think you probably got most of my pictures from Sujata. And this is another one which I did with my friends. They wanted, see, the thing is, I don't consider being a teacher. I just explore it. So this is one I did with my, you know. This
Beautiful.
is half male and half female. And that the concept is every human being have that quality in you. So this is also done in acrylic. Yeah.
That's beautiful. And so what's interesting about these two is you might be using very contemporary materials like coffee
right.
or acrylic
That's right.
paints, but you're
Right.
still retaining a sense of a traditional
Correct.
style or a traditional art form. How do you all make those choices? When you're thinking about that, what elements of the traditional art forms do you hold, is really important to hold on to, and what do you let go of in order to do something new? And Kathy, I think you could talk about this too with your music. I mean, yeah. Satyavani, I think you unmute. Well, Geetha, why don't you go first, and then Satyavani, and then Kathy.
I think it's just the opportunity that you get in this country with the different media, and that is something very unique that I notice here. And you are able to explore it. You can just try it on a canvas paper if you are not confident, and then you work on your canvas. That way you are kind of improving your own art. I have only learned that little bit of training in India. That's about it for a couple of, and then the rest is all you learn by yourself. Yeah, of course, the porcelain painting I learned from a old teacher, and then they all push you because they are all quite old. My family always teases me. You have the range of 3-year-old to 97. That's it. That's the beauty of it. I enjoy it.
So what was your what was your motivation to learn the Tanjore painting?
Tanjore painting, it's done in temples, and it's a very old form of art in Tamil Nadu. Right. And it's done with gold, with pure gold. They used to do it. Now they have the gold leaf. And then I started learning that. Actually, there's a teacher she's doing it on Zoom classes. So I went back and I'm learning again from her. Yeah. A lot of things. And they use the regular stones, and they make it 3-dimensional, and then they put the gold on it. It's very interesting how they do it. Yeah.
And so what motivated you to do that? Why did you want to learn that?
Again, the same thing when I went to India. I didn't want to be too much caught up with this thing. And then I found out there was Tanjore painting classes available. I went and joined. Little did I know she was my classmate. So we really caught up with all our school days. And it was fun to learn it from her. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Satyavani.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I see a similarity. I haven't done Tanjore paintings. I've seen them, and I see a similarity between Tanjore painting and what Nina does with the egg tempera, and yes, the use of gold leaf and so on. I think most cultures have that when we include precious elements into that.
Right.
So the question is about, could you repeat that, Amy?
Just what elements of traditional art forms, or even traditional imagery, what elements of your home culture do you hold on to, and is it really important to hold on to, and what new things are you mixing in? In other words, how are you kind of balancing this line between these traditional art forms and more contemporary art forms?
Yeah. So with my painting, I'm realizing that I'm incorporating a lot of traditional folk art as backdrops for my still lives. Mm-hmm. And I won't take you around here. You can probably see it in the examples I've given, but I use Madhubani, a lot of, techniques that are done by people for generations, which are folk arts, and I incorporate that as backgrounds and do that. So that's as far as my painting goes. For the dance, see, what do we dance to? We dance to music, right? And that music in Kuchipudi has a certain beat, a certain rhythm to it. So what I realized is, and it is, recently, in the Indian diaspora, people are realizing that this needs to be done. So there is music that's coming out that is, that is universal, or they have, songs that are very popular in the Western, like Swala, Shape of You, and they Indianize it. They make it to the rhythms and the beats. So there is that part of the fusion or the diversity that's taking place. But personally, for me, for my young students, their sensibility is very much American. They are Indian, born to Indian parents, but they're growing up here. You know, when you're in India, even right now, I think everybody opens the tap and gets the water. In olden days, they used to carry the pot on the head. But when you're dancing with that, in India, I think people would have seen it somewhere in some rural area or in a painting. So there is that sensibility that this is how you carry. But when I'm teaching that in dance to students here, it changes, the explanation has to be there. So what I decided is I'm going to take contemporary themes. And so I'm working on Panchatantra, which is very similar to Aesop's fables. And most of my students are also young. They're very young, and there is a lot of Shringara or romantic, songs and so on. And how do I teach that to young kids, right? So as they get older, I do teach it. So what I'm starting to do is, working on myself. So I started my master's in Kuchipudi recently because I have to learn to be a choreographer, not just a performer and a teacher. And that requires a different set of skills and understanding music and collaborating. So that is my quest right now, that I'm learning, improving my basic skills so that I can make it more universal, where the music will speak with the rhythm of the tradition, but it will be more contemporary. So I'm looking to collaborate with musicians from here too and understand it and create a piece that will have less local language, because India is also a country of many languages and my students don't all speak the same Indian language. So we actually talk in English, but English as a language doesn't conform nicely to a song structure in, Kuchipudi. So I'm going more with just the music, but making it more contemporary and the stories more relatable, more universal. So that's where my dance is headed.
That's great. I love this idea of developing mastery in the traditional dance will enable you to better innovate within that dance form. Somebody that doesn't have the deep mastery, when they innovate, it might sort of no longer have those traditional elements, but by really developing your mastery in this, you're able to retain kind of what's really essential about that dance form and yet innovate in order to adapt for your current audience or your current set of students. Kathy, do you find that, how does that work for you in playing the guzheng with say a fiddle or a mandolin that's more, American music?
I think all the music, the roots is the same. Only thing is the rhythm and the tempo will change a lot from the Western music and the tradition. Nothing really.
Yeah. So when
no
you
conflict
play
in between.
Right. So when you play the guzheng and you're playing, say, an American tune, are you playing it like you play it traditionally, or are you evolving even the way you're strumming or plucking the instrument itself? Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes, it's a different. Most traditional, the technique, traditional classical Chinese music require different technique with modern or contemporary, current contemporary music. The power you use and the rhythm is like a really restrict. Most traditional Chinese medicine, just like their arts, it's very close to nature really relaxed, can be like a little dragging in this bar, and can be a little faster. Another one, it's not really strictly like a Western music. It's better you play with other people together, and then you have to be really that. But the taste will be different. Result is different.
I love that. And I think, again, you know, having the mastery so that you really, really understand how that instrument works is what allows you to actually collaborate with completely different kind of musical forms. I think that's, you know, and I think that gets a little bit at, some of you have all been talking a little bit about audience, whether your audience is students in your classes, or whether it's people who might buy your work. And, you know, and so I think being conscious and aware of that, you all have talked a little bit about how you've made those changes. Has any of that been painful, or melancholic in the sense of giving something up? I don't know. Have any of you felt that, or have you felt it more? Yeah, Nina.
Yes, may I still say about balancing? I didn't say about old culture and new culture. Just briefly, in iconography, in my choral conducting, it was the most. Iconography, it was, you cannot really change much, but also once you gain mastery, as you say, with something, then you can bend the rules a little bit. It's the same with playing piano and iconography. So certain steps that are required for beginners, it could be omitted if they're extremely painful for somebody. Also, what I do, how I change it, as I stopped believing in punishing deity, and so facial expressions or countenance, how we call them, they're not severe or stern like you could see some traditional iconographies around the world, because it reflects the mentality of the population. So knowing the skills, it's possible to make them more serene, tranquil, blissful, and it doesn't take much. You just need to know what to do exactly. And so this is with art of iconography, and with choral conducting, what was Satyavani was saying about the language. Ancient languages are very profound, and so they contain the meanings that some modern languages, like English, is considered more modern language. They need to, like, 5 words to describe what they have in one word. That's why it's easier to write poetry in let's say Russian, which I write, than in English, which I write too. And it's in choral conducting, and it's also in chanting. We don't say it's singing, it's a chanting. Right. It's a different way of addressing people, but it's from the heart. Again, as I understood, it's not being by the letter of the law, singing every single note and every single word that is pronounced in, but it's how you do it. You can do, I didn't understand it before, how it's 2 notes or 3 notes can make such a powerful impact, because this is how psychology says that words themselves are only tiny part of impression. Mostly it's our tone of voice, which is when it comes from the heart, and facial and other expressions. So I think that's about balancing. And
that's beautiful. And I love right now that you have a halo behind you. One of your icons. Again, I think that notion of I love that you could look at an icon and maybe even learn something about the kind of the deeper psyche of a culture by the countenance of that icon. That's really beautiful. So we're getting very close to running out of time. I think we could talk for another hour at least, but we don't have that. We only have about 7 minutes. So I wanted to just ask very quickly, all 4 of you are women, 5 of you, including Sujata, obviously, we're all women. And women have traditionally been the kind of the caretakers of a culture, the caretakers of tradition, you know, including stories, including music, including food and values. And I'm wondering if how that does that show up in any way in your art form, being the woman, being the caretaker. Do you think about that as you are thinking about the evolution or the changes or the adaptations in your art form? Do you think about that kind of responsibility of passing on a culture? Kathy? And then Satyavani? Oh, Kathy, I think you froze. Go ahead, Satyavani. Oh, no, are you there?
Yeah, you haven't heard me before, right?
No.
Okay, this is a very interesting, very important topic. Yeah, things we're all women's. And especially we all come from the Asian culture, traditional Asian culture. Man is the master of the household. I don't know Indian that much, but from I know, I feel the same way too. And this revolution, women's revolution over that land, it's not really easy. For example, my parents, they are college classmates, graduate school classmates. They're in the same, pretty much the same major in geology and astrology, but not in the same, like a small field. So mom as a woman, she need to be compete in academically, same of the men, also need to hold entire household care. So that's what we grow up, we see. So women's revolution, women's right movement in China really took very long and not really easy. A lot of people learn hard way. I think I'm benefited for experience like this. And I try to be from very young. I only respect women's parts. I don't want to be like also carry the men's duty also. But in a way, the culture bring you into, you have to compete. Even the instrumental in Asian China, only men, the scholar, can play, have the opportunity to use it, not women. So that's what I'm challenged in. I have to be good mastery. So come to over this way. But now after the culture change, all have the trend. So now a lot, you can see a lot of instrumental, traditional Chinese instrumental, the boys played very well also. So this very interesting culture. I do like to hear my friend from Indian background, what they feel about the women's right and the culture. What is a real women's right? That's, I'm always thinking about this question. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. So I do come from a patriarchal culture too. And for me, the struggle has been when I was working as a software engineer, it was easier to go away on tours, to get my workshops and everything, because there was money coming in consistently and pretty reasonable chunk of money. And we are universally, not just in India, China, anywhere, universally in a culture where finances are defining success, right? So as an artist, for me, that was the struggle that I had to, it was at different levels. One was at a family level where I had to overcome my own guilt, you know, that I had formed over generations, that this is how a mom behaves. You don't do these things. First I had to overcome that before I went in and talked to my family members and said, this is what I like, this is what a family does, and you guys have to support me. And it's worked out pretty well. I am, so first, I think the challenge was at that. And I think there is, as a dancer, especially Indian classical dancer, I really feel a very strong need to pass on the tradition to the students. But it also comes down to, why are the students learning, right? That is not something I can enforce. Why are they learning? Are they learning because they will get into an Ivy League school? This is just to build up their resume as something that is diverse. And, are they learning because they're not? So what is it? Why is it they're learning? So as a teacher, I feel a very deep responsibility to inculcate in them the need for understanding, the culture deeply. Understanding that, yes, these songs were done this many years ago and this is how they did it, but even now they can be done. Why is it relevant now? How is that dance form that was done so many ages ago, how is it relevant now? I feel a very strong need as a teacher to listen to what the children have to say, to acknowledge them, and to address what their issues are. And they might be something as simple as, why do I have to put my flower in my hair like this? Can I just take it and put it like this? These are things that we do. It's small, small things, but students have those questions. And that's how I feel, as a teacher, for passing on tradition.
Yeah, that's great. And Kuchipudi, or classical Indian dance, is it is a feminine art form for the most part, right? And but I think it's interesting to kind of think of the evolution of how women feel doing the dance and what it does for them in the terms of their identity, personality, that sort of thing, and how that evolves over years. It's very interesting. And Nina, I just had one quick question, and then we probably need to wrap up. But is it typical for women to be doing icon writing, or is that? I mean, is that uncommon or common?
It's evolved, because everything, it was very patriarchal culture, the same as in India. It's Russia. It's partly Asian in mentality. It's Western part is in education more, but it's in a split. So it's not traditional for women now, more and more. And I just wanted to add a little bit. For me, it's a deeply spiritual question, because, like we say, women's right, it won't do much good if women become like a man in a way of activity and being more harsh and all of this. So it's gentleness inside from within. If somebody is spiritually developed, then it goes without. We cannot force it. We cannot force beauty. Beauty comes from within. And so in our culture in America, and I think maybe in the whole world, feminine quality of understanding, love, caring, and all of this they become a little more developed. And so it's in changing patriarchal society in a way of hierarchy.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And what a great way to kind of wrap things up. I think, Kathy does this fabulous work of incorporating music with a healing practice. And all of you do artwork that draws on belief, that draws on a sense of well-being, that draws on beauty in the world. And in so many ways, I think the art that you are doing is really an art that is healing, healing for us, healing for you individually, as obviously the case for Geetha very personally right now. And I wish you all just the healthiest recovery from your treatments. I just hope, and I hope that, you know, this conversation about art, you know, it's so healing, and it's so, I think it's an opportunity to not only heal us individually, but to heal our communities and to heal our cultures and our planet. So I just want to end by thanking all of you for the work that you do to bring beauty and well-being into our lives on a daily basis. I'm so grateful for that. I want to, and thank you for sharing your stories and your beliefs and your insights with us today. And I especially want to thank the Sujata and the Everhart Museum, and remind you all that this is part of the Folk and Traditional Arts Partnership of the Pennsylvania Council on the Arts that has supported this event today. So I want to thank them. It's a network of folk arts activities all over the state, and the Everhart Museum is one of the partners in the Northeast region. So I just want to thank all of you so much for being here with us today, and for and go forth and create. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.